Now, I'm not sure when, but at some point copying files became like a really big deal. For example, here's Windows PowerShell, brand new technology, and if you ask for help, it does in fact have a copy item command. So we can look at the help for that. Now the problem is this doesn't really do anything all that different from what Windows Explorer would do if you were just dragging a file from one place to another. In other words, it sets the same ACL as a brand new copied file would have, meaning the copy of the file is going to inherit its parent folder permissions. It's not going to copy the ACL from the original file. So, in a lot of cases, especially if you're migrating files, this does you no good. You could, I suppose, switch over or fall back to good old Xcopy. Xcopy can copy file ownership and ACL information. It's got some problems though. If you try to copy into an environment where the ACL doesn't match up, let's say you've got a file that had some local permissions assigned to it and you're copying it to a different machine that doesn't have that local account, or if you're copying across domains and the SIDs don't all match up, which they won't, then this falls apart. Xcopy is also single-threaded, which means it's really, really slow if you're migrating a lot of files. So I thought, this can't be that hard. So I jumped over, still using PowerShell here, wrote myself a little script. It's called Migrate File, and here's what it does. It accepts two inputs, one of which can be one or more files, so that's what this input object is going to represent, and then a target path, just a string to where you want to copy them to. For each file that you give this thing, it starts off by grabbing its access control list. So it pipes the file to get ACL, and that resulting access control list is stored here. Then it goes ahead and copies the file to whatever destination you specified, and it passes that file through to the set ACL commandlet and puts that original ACL back onto it. So I ran this, and then it occurred to me, I actually run into some of the same problems that I had with Xcopy. For one, PowerShell is single-threaded, which means if I've got millions of files, this is going to take millions of hours. If I've got ACL information, access control entries that don't exist in the target environment, like a cross-domain copy, or if I had local permissions, that won't happen. There's also no logging, and I started to think, I guess I could start to build all that, but if you start thinking about all the things you need, you got to log, you got to watch for open files, because otherwise you'll get an error because it can't copy them, so you've got to trap that error, log that information, maybe retry the file later, getting this running across multiple threads so it performs a little better. All of those things just become increasingly difficult and piling on. I started to look at Robocopy, which is actually not even a resource kit utility anymore. It's built right in. So you've got Robocopy, at least it does a log. And I guess I could set it to retry, and I started building out one of these command lines for Robocopy with all of these different options, and it winds up being incredibly long and complicated. Still runs fairly slowly, although you can get it to run across multiple threads at least. There's a bit for that. So you have it recurse subdirectories. This is how you get it to copy files with security. You can attempt to fix security on files. You can have it attempt to skip files. So if a source file isn't available or something else, you can work it that way and just have it skip the file and log it. You can do multi-threaded copies. So it starts to get really complicated, and it still doesn't do everything. It can't take care of, for example, the ACL information not matching. Local things going across machines or domain accounts going across domains. Can't fix that. So it seems like you run into all these little edge cases. Something like this, you could spend a couple hours getting the perfect command line written, and it works for 90% of your files, but you still have to spend this incredible amount of time on the other 10%. And so sometimes it makes sense to see if somebody else has built a tool that sort of incorporates some of that in. But this is what you run up against when you're doing massive file migrations.